Hi, I'm Sydney and welcome to my fall book recommendations video. I don't know about you, but usually every fall my reading just goes up and up and up. I read a lot over the summer as I'm traveling and I'm out and about, but in the fall my travels slow down to a bit of a crawl and I have a lot more time at home. Although I'm working still a lot in the fall, I find pockets of full days where I can just go out into the mountains and go on hikes and just bring books with me and just take whole evenings off just to curl up with a book. There's a lot more binge reading for me in the fall. It's when I'm just getting cozy and I'm just enjoying the weather and the trees around me. I live in Virginia and our fall foliage is just beyond outstanding and it just makes me want to be surrounded by trees, getting nice and cozy with a hot drink and a good book. There are of course genres that just lend more easily to this time of year, and so I have a ton of genre specific recommendations for you and I'm hoping you're able to take quite a few recommendations from this video. I'll be showing some of the books that I have read before and I recommend for this time of year, and I'll also be including my very large fall TBR. But if there are books or big genres or micro genres that you just associate with fall, please comment them down below. I would absolutely love to include them into my fall recommendations. First category here is obviously going to be fantasy. I read fantasy year round, but it really picks up in the fall every year. So I have a few recommendations for you, and by a few I mean a lot, and then I have an even bigger fantasy fall TBR to share. So first, Where the Dark Stand Still. This came out a year or two ago and it just took the internet by storm, so if you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend. This is a sentient house in a creepy forest with a powerful kind of witchy young person who wants to heal without magic, and a god of the forest who is the love interest. A Deal with the Elf King is the first in Elise Kova's Married to Magic series, and in each of them a human is taken into the magical realm and they have to, in some reasons, they have to marry the prince or the person of their section. So this first book is a healer who has the power of the elves in her somehow, and the Elf King has to bring her over and marry her. And it's a very fun story of them slowly coming to love each other. There's a bit of a mystery element in which they're trying to break a curse in here, and I think this first book is perfect for fall. Gods of Jade and Shadow is a 1920s Mexican tale in which our main character has to go on this adventure with the Lord of the Underworld or the God of Death. I don't remember exactly which. And it's just a really wonderful adventure that I think about all of the time, literally all of the time. If you have not read this yet, it's part of Silvio Moreno Garcia's extended backlist. I highly recommend, especially for fall. Pretty much all of Naomi Novik's entire backlist can be used for fall fantasy aesthetic. I'm going to particularly recommend Uprooted. It's like a Beauty and the Beast kind of retelling in which our main girlie has to be taken to this dragon wizard lair kind of thing. And it's her story of her learning to become her own source of magic. I really loved it. It's super atmospheric. I do really want to read her. She has a dark academia or school setting fantasy series that I really want to read, but pretty much anything by Naomi Novik. I obviously cannot go a single recommendations video without talking about Graceling, so you've heard me talk about it a ton. Pick it up if you haven't read it yet. A few other fantasy books that I think would fit really well in fall that I don't have with me are the Singing Hills cycle. This is a collection of very short, very atmospheric books that can be read in any order, but I recommend the publishing order. I think there's 4 or 5 out right now, and they are super atmospheric. They are just creepy, but they're also really informational, and there's a large theme that you can take away from each book. I highly recommend. I also recently read the Book of Azrael, and that's a large romantasy, enemies to lovers, lots of death and mayhem and murder and chaos kind of book, and I'm really looking forward to continuing that series. And I can recommend so many other fantasy books, but we're gonna stop there for now and talk about my fantasy fall TBR. Okay, now I'm quite aware there's a 0% chance I'm gonna be able to finish all of the books I'm gonna talk about in this video, but you know what, I'm gonna explain them all anyway. A lot of them I own for each category, and a lot of them I don't own. So we'll always go through the books that I own first, and then a ton of my Kindle reads. So first up, The Goblin Emperor. This is just one of those fantasy books that has been so wildly praised, but nobody talks about it really. So I'm really want to get to this one. This Vicious Grace is the first book in a duology that really stood out to me on one of my trips to Waterstones. It's just a fantasy book, totally normal that I've just been dying to get to. Grave Mercy just screams fall to me. She's sired by the god of death and will be trained in his arts. In Enchantment of Ravens, like the cover just screams fall, but then she has dealings with the Autumn Prince. Like this has to be read in the fall time. Curse of the Wolf King is the first in an interconnected series, I think, and this one I feel like it has to be read in the fall. I also met Tasanya Odette and she seemed so fun, so I really want to start reading her books. Belladonna is potentially the book that I most want to read out of this stack. I've been wanting to read it for literally years at this point. I just haven't picked it up yet. But I think she deals, or the love interest is Death himself. I don't really remember. I just know that I really want to read this. A Treachery is Swans is by the same author as Where the Dark Stand Still. And so this one is also just like screaming fall to me. I want to read it so badly. I also have an Illumicrate version of this. It's a Swan Lake retelling, I believe. And the last one I own is the Foxglove King. I bought this one out of Barnes & Noble because I just fell in love with the end papers. But it's a young woman's secret power to raise the dead plunges her into dangerous world of the Sainted King's royal court. So that is obviously a fall book. And then off the Kindle, I have an absurd amount of books I want to read, and also just like a ton of books that are coming out soon this fall. I have Wild Reverence, Silver Cloak, A Dance of Lies, Shield of Sparrows, The Forest King's Daughter, Servant of Earth, Metal Slinger, Lore of the Wilds, The Wolf King, The Road of Bones, Garden of the Cursed, God Killer, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, and Dawn of Onyx. And of course I have so many other fantasy books that I want to read this fall, but those are the ones that most speak out to me. We'll see how many of those I get through. Okay, next up we have dark or gothic fantasy. Now this is a spectrum for me where you can just have like some gothic vibes, but it's a pretty chill story, it's not scary at all, to it can be pretty dark and pretty scary and pretty gruesome. So there is a wide array of things happening in this genre. I have a few recommendations and then a few that are on my radar for this. First up is Blood of Hercules. I read this one pretty recently and was shocked that I gave it 5 stars. I put it in this category because there's some heavy themes in this. There's a lot of like torture and a lot of death and murder and mystery. There's a lot of, when I say there's a lot of dark themes, I mean it. And it's pretty gruesome, but it has like a lighthearted tone. I found myself just absolutely loving the approach of the main character. She felt so realistic to me. It's basically a Greek mythology inspired dark reverse harem in a like trials combat kind of thing that takes place over a long period of time. I loved it. Next up is Anything by Rachel Gillig. Her books aren't dark in the sense that like they're gonna give you nightmares, but they're dark in the sense that they have gothic undertones and kind of spooky magic systems, and some people are dying, the stakes are high for them, but it's not like I'm not at the edge of my seat because I'm scared. I'm at the edge of my seat because I want to know what happens. Of course, One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns is her Shepherd King duology, and it has kind of like card magic with a demon inside our main character's head. And The Night and the Moth is her most recent release. The second in this duology is not yet out, and it probably won't be for a little while now because this just came out. But this is like diviner magic in which our main character has to be drowned in order to dream. And both of her series take our main character through the path of discovery of the corrupted system and their band of thieves together to try to topple the very system that is kind of oppressing their peoples. I also recommend Anything by Erin A. Craig. All of her things are, I think, YA with very creepy undertones. There's usually death, like mysterious, creepy death, but it's not like, I don't like horror, but this is like YA horror that I can handle. They all are, some of them are retellings, like this one is a 12 Dancing Princesses retelling. She has a Godfather Death retelling. I forget what this one is, but they're all just like creepy enough to be really perfect for fall weather. She has a new release coming out this fall that I am incredibly excited to read. Along that same vein, I also recommend Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. It's a Goose Girl retelling that isn't like dark in the sense that like it's gonna scare you, but it's like gothic in the sense that it feels like a classic fairy tale that's like meant to give you a very dark lesson. And I think there's a second book that goes after that I haven't read yet. It's been a little while since I've read it. I'd also tag along The Children of Gods and Fighting Men. I haven't read the rest of the series, but it's like ancient Irish history if it included like long archaic magic, and it's very bloody, it's very gory. There's a lot of really tragic things that happen in it, which is why I've given it a lot of space from continuing the series. But if you like a pretty bloody magical history, I would include that. And a couple books I have on my radar for dark or gothic fantasy, I have A Study in Drowning. I've owned this for so long. I wouldn't exactly call it dark academia because it doesn't really follow the rules of the genre, so I put it in here. But I'm also deeply interested in Hemlock and Silver, House of Blight, Until the World Falls Down, Don't Let the Forest In, Anathema, Fantasia, and a couple of others. In a completely different vein, we also have cozy fantasy. So you can oscillate between really dark, gritty, paranormal kind of fantasy and then cozy, getting warm and cuddly and like having a good time kind of fantasy. I hate to be basic, but Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone Dust really are peak for cozy fantasy. I absolutely adore these series and I am unbelievably excited for the third one that's coming out soon. I think it's called Brigands and Bread Knives or something like that. These are peak cozy fantasy if you haven't read them yet. I would call The Phoenix Keeper like cozy fantasy adjacent. It's like not exactly the like, you know, fall time vibes, but it is a fantasy book that takes place in like a small setting with like magical creatures doing their like little hijinks. It's really low stakes and it is a very lovely story. It is marketed as a sapphic romance and that's part of it, but more so it's this very anxious zookeeper's story as she tries to rehabilitate the phoenix population. I also read and loved A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. This was my first T. Kingfisher book. It is a YA book for sure, but it's like, it's cozy in the way, in like, it's the coziest a little war book can be. There was one section right in the middle that threw me off because it was very Anne Frank hiding in the cupboards from Nazis kind of thing. Very odd, but otherwise I did really enjoy that book and I really want to read other T. Kingfisher books so badly. But cozy fantasy is a relatively new genre to me, and although I love it so much, I don't have a ton of other books that I've read by it. So I have a few cozy fantasy books on my TBR this fall, including The Spell Shop, The Honey Witch, A Fellowship of Bakers and Magic, and if you have any more, please let me know. Our next category is going to be paranormal, and this is going to be specifically like urban fantasy books or like low fantasy books in which witches and werewolves kind of take a prominent role. And the only two that I've like read and can recommend you is number one, A Dowry of Blood. That one's pretty gothic, but I wanted to include it in here because it is heavily a vampire book. It's about the brides of Dracula. Perfect for spooky time season. I really recommend if you haven't read it yet, although it can be disturbingly uncomfortable at times. That was definitely the point of the book. And then the only like werewolf shifter romance book that I've ever really loved is Moon Called, and it's like a crazy opening of a huge like shifter series. It's not like, there is a bit of romance, but that's really not the main plot of the first book at least. I've only read the first book. I definitely intend to read the rest of the series, hopefully this fall. But I do have quite a few like witchy books on my physical TBR and my Kindle TBR that I'd like to try to get to this fall. Number one is Bring Me Your Midnight. I know this is like about a witch being kicked out of her coven, I think. It definitely has witches in it. I did try this when I first got it like 2 years ago. I read the first chapter and I wasn't feeling it, I think because it was like springtime or something. So I'd like to give that another try. I also have Bloodleaf. I think this is the first one. I don't know. I have all three of them and I don't really know which one goes first, but I know this is about witches and these covers are just stunning that I want to read this so badly. Serpent and Dove is that classic witch and witch hunter that I just haven't gotten to yet, but I know it's like a book talk classic. And then I have Ritual Income, which I know is like a dark witchy series. I met B.L. Brown at Imaginarium, and so I'd love to try to read her book this year. But also on my radar, I have Blood Moon, Immortal Dark, and Heartless Hunter. Now, I'm not a huge vampire girly, but I'll try them occasionally. But witches and werewolves and stuff like that, like, yeah, I'm down for. And then a very slight pivot from that is actually like Witchy Rom-Coms, which is an entire category of books that I love reading every year. I pick a couple every year. They're super like lighthearted. There's usually like funny hijinks. It's like Sabrina the Teenage Witch kind of vibes. Not serious at all. They definitely like mix up in my brain quite a lot, and I'm pretty sure like a week later I remember absolutely nothing, but they're a fun time every time. The only one I have a copy of is Payback's a Witch, and it's definitely like getting back at an ex using magic and hijinks, and there's usually really fun love stories in here. This one, our main character is actually bi, and so there's a really fun love story in here. This series in particular is really inclusive, and so that's why I continue with this series every year as soon as she comes out with a new one. But I really love how most of them have like small towns, lots of side characters, they're all up in each other's businesses, and then like, you know, we get other side characters throughout the series, so they're just like really fun. The X-Hex is a super similar series, except that one I think is actually a second chance. At least the first book is, and I think it follows like Welsh brothers that come to America for some reason. I will say like my favorite witchy rom-com is What the Hex by Alexis Daria. It is this super short witchy rom-com that I desperately wish was longer, and I read it every year. It's a Latinx witchy rom-com in which our main character returns to the secretly obscured witchy island off the coast of Florida, and they go back because it's her sister's wedding, but turns out demons have like taken over the family, and so now she has to fake date and work together with her ex-rival from high school to try to like abolish the demons, and it's like, it makes me giggle so hard. I wish it was longer, oh my goodness. But this year I have quite a few of these books on my radar. We'll see which ones I end up picking, but I have Hopelessly Devoted. Also, a lot of these have like puns as their names. Violent Thistleweight is Not a Villain Anymore, Love's a Witch, A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and then I put in this category Soul Searching. It's kind of like a ghosty rom-com. Our next category is the most obvious, and that is Dark Academia. That is like fall to the core, can't read it outside of any other season, but I've come to realize that Dark Academia isn't really my genre, but I get myself to read like one a year to like, you know, make sure that I'm making sure I don't love the genre, because there's some really solid books that come out of that. But all of the ones that I've read, and I've read quite a few at this point, I can't really recommend them because I didn't like them. They're definitely within the genre. I think we called too many books Dark Academia, but the ones that I have read that are definitely part of the genre, I haven't loved any of them. I think some of them I will go back one day and reread, like give it a better chance as I'm like a more mature reader, but really the only one that I can safely recommend is The Secret History, because it's like the Dark Academia book. I still remember every portion of this book. It was a tough one to get through, but I knew I needed to start my Dark Academia journey through here. So I do have a few on my radar for this year, but like most realistically, I'm only going to read one or two. I think the one I'm most likely to get to is If We Were Villains. I've had this for a while. I was an English major in college, so of course a Shakespearean Dark Academia is right up my alley, but I've forgotten probably most of what I've learned, so we'll see. And of course we have Babel and Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. These are two books that I know I will get to one day. I could get to Babel this year, we'll see. I'm definitely not gonna get to Catabasis though. But the other two that I have on my radar are The Library at Hellborough, or Hellbore, however you say that, and Blood Over Brightheaven, because I've only heard the best things about that one. But in a similar vein, I have fantasy books that take place in school settings. And I distinguish this from Dark Academia because they don't have like the criteria of a Dark Academia. Maybe their professor isn't the one that dies, like maybe they're not talking about like the political hellscapes that they're supposed to in Dark Academia. So this is a slightly different genre, and I have two recommendations, and they are wildly different. The first one is of course going to be Legendborn. I tabbed the crap out of this. It is a Arthurian inspired reimagining, however you call it, badass of a YA book that I have never read the likes of, and I cannot wait to continue the series. If you have not started it, I put it off for so long, definitely get it started. And in a wildly different theme of recommendations, I have Nocturnal. This was the first book I read of the year, and I still remember it distinctly. It is a two professors kind of romance in which the male professor is like a Dr. Jekyll and Hyde kind of situation, and she falls for both of them. Super dark romance, monster romance kind of thing, but it took place at a school setting, and I couldn't really find another genre to recommend it within. But like lots and lots of trigger warnings in here. This is like the closest I will ever recommend for a dark romance. And then I have three series that are on my radar for this. I have Immortal Consequences, Blood and Betrayals, which is the first of the Avalon University series, and then also Avalon Tower. Interesting that they're both named Avalon, but that's okay. And then the very last category for fall book recommendations is going to be fall themed contemporary romance novels. Now I don't have a ton that I've read or I have on my TBR, so this is where I need like the most beefing up for things that don't exactly include magic, even though I'm about to break my own rule right now. So if you have any recommendations for this, please let me know. The only two that I have for you is The Dead Romantics, which I just broke my own rule. This is a book that is a contemporary romance, but it also deals with a lot of grief over her losing her father. It's about her copy editor who just died and he's become a ghost, so it's like their love story. It's a book for people that have kind of lost their love of writing and of life and of love, and I still remember it very distinctly. I'd love to reread it this year. And then the only other book I have for you is Business Casual, which is the fall book in BK Borison's Love Life Farm series. This one was by far my favorite. I saw myself in so much, like I saw myself so much in both these main characters. I cannot wait to reread it. I've been rereading each book in its designated series, or in its designated season. And then I have a few on my TBR. Number one is going to be Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I should have put this in the paranormal romance, but I didn't see it until now, but I definitely will get to this fall. But then the three books that I actually have on my radar are People Watching, If It Makes You Happy, and The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy. The last one could be paranormal, I don't know, but those are the ones that like are most like screaming fall to me. So those are going to be all of my fall book recommendations and my fall TBR. Clearly, I've got a lot of books ahead of me. There's a 0% chance that I can get to all of them, but regardless, I still want all of your fall book recommendations. Are there any fantasy books or romance books or really any kind of books that stick out to you to read in the fall? What do you really love? Are there any genres or microgenres that you love in this time period? Please let me know down in the comments below if you've read any of the books that I have in my TBR and if you think I should read them too. I'd really appreciate it. But that's going to be all that I have for you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.